Welcome everyone for EmpoweringLearners.ai Global Conference. In this panel section, we'll be talking about ethical considerations and emerging technologies in AIED. The focus is on exploring challenges, opportunities, and the way forward. We have four panelists here: Dr. Kaushal Kumar Bhagat, professor from IIT Kharagpur; Dr. Rwitajit Majumdar, a professor from Kuala University; and Dr. Shitanshu Mishra, IT head at UNESCO MGIEP; and Dr. Ramkumar, Rajendran, myself from IIT Bombay. So Dr. Shitanshu Mishra will be moderating this session. So over to you, Shitanshu.
Thank you, Professor Rajendran. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shitanshu, and
Shitanshu Mishra is the host now.
okay, yeah. So my name is Shitanshu, and I feel really honored to be part of this panel. Welcome all the panelists and audience. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So, without any further delay, let's start with the agenda of today's session. So, this panel, how we are going to talk about the agenda forward is like we will start with a country example. One of the panelists, Professor Kaushal, will talk about state of AI in educational ecosystem. He'll take an example of one country and um, talk about the state of educational AI in the educational ecosystem. After that, we will talk about AI-driven teaching learning. So is there, how does AI in teaching learning looks like? Is there any model? So Professor Rwitajit Majumdar will talk about one such model and try to explain us how AI in education looks like, followed by ethics of AI in education, which I will talk about. How does the discipline ethics of AI in education looks like? And given all the ethical concerns, the last part of the panel would be addressing ethical concerns. And Professor Rajendran will talk about how to address ethical concerns. Are there any guidelines where to look into all these things? So to start with, so these are the four primary questions. So first is about the educational ecosystem, and then how AI looks like, followed by what is ethics of AI in education, and then any solutions to ethical concerns within AI in education. And then at the end, all the panelists will conclude with their views on what is the way forward. Audience can ask questions. You can use different channels: Zoom chat, Zoom question answering, and Google question answering platforms. So you can post your questions anytime. Feel free. Uh, so let's start with the first question. What are the major findings about Indian AI educational ecosystem as per the last SER report on AI that Professor Kaushal authored with UNESCO? Over to you, Professor.
Yeah, thank you, Shitanshu, and good morning and namaste from India. I'm going to discuss about the current status and challenges of artificial intelligence in India. I'm a faculty at IIT Kharagpur, also holding the position of Vice Chairman at CTLVS IIT Kharagpur. Shitanshu, can you move the slide? In 2021, we have the report about state of education report, specifically in the field of AI. We have identified some of the important perspectives, and we very interestingly we found that AI market is going to reach almost 7.8 billion US dollar by 2025, which is almost like more than 20% of CAGR. And in fact, AI software market in India is going to grow almost 6.4 billion US dollar at the rate of 18% CAGR. So this is very important to note that India's economy, which is like fifth largest economy, and yesterday I was reading the report, one of the article also, that India is going to cross even Japan and Germany very soon, and going to be the third largest market in the world. And AI is going to be one of the key going to perform a key role in the economic development, where it's going to add almost like $450 billion to $500 billion in GDP. And it is also noted that AI is going to add almost 1.3% of GDP by 2035, which is showing that how important is AI in India, specifically for the growth. Shitanshu, can you move the slide? If we see these graphs, so you will find that a lot of capital investment is also going in different sectors. I can say that specifically in AI, and you can find out that whether consumer services, digital security. It is also noted that education and training is also one of the key sector where a lot of venture capital investment is going on, specifically for the development of AI solutions, whether it's for the school education or higher education in different educational sectors. So this is very important part that artificial intelligence is not limited to only industries like logistics or finance. It is also focusing education sector. And e-learn India is one of the, I think, second largest market for e-learning, where artificial intelligence is being used, and many AI based tools and solutions are also being developed to take care of these education and training sectors. Next. Now, what are the current AI policies in India? Specifically, you will find out that in 2018, which is Niti Aayog, we have developed, we also call it as a think tank of Government of India. They have started National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence. And there are certain recommendations that has been made by Niti Aayog. One of some very important thing is that you will find out that one of the key is developing a guidelines for responsible AI, because as we know that when we are using AI based tools, there are many ethical um, challenges are there. How we are going to tackle those challenges, that is there a lot of focus on promoting the research in AI, and very important that how we can develop our homegrown solutions, AI solutions in different sectors. That was one of the policy that has been started in Niti Aayog. Then one of the very noted is that now we have new education policy in 2020 we have got, where as we know that India has a lot of languages, right? And uh, how we can use artificial intelligence for Indian languages in learning purpose also. Like in Tamil Nadu, we have a different language. In West Bengal, we have different language. So how artificial, if the content is provided, so using NLP and other stuffs, how we can convert the content into different languages. That is very challenging, and AI is going to provide us a lot of solutions. Now Bhashini is one of the tool that is being developed by MIT, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. In addition to that, we have also focused in national education policy to develop the curricula and pedagogy also related to AI, not only for the postgraduate or doctorate, even in the school education also, how artificial intelligence could be integrated in the curriculum. Because we need workforce in the next 10 years to for the artificial intelligence implementation, and also finding the local solutions for that. Like we are thinking for from local to global. And another aspect is that translating the textbooks, which is also one of the focal point of national education policy by using artificial intelligence. Yeah, please move. For that, Ministry of Education also established one policy where we have the National Digital Education Architecture, and there are important recommendations that has been made. One thing is that enable data collection in schools through AI tools to track the learning progress of the students, speech detection, and then one of the most important thing is that how we can use artificial intelligence for the personalized learning. because we have such a large population. Even in the classroom also, it is very difficult for the teachers to provide personalized feedback or solutions for each student. But artificial intelligence could be one of the game-changing solution that can be integrated in school education for providing the personalized learning experience for the students. Then another very interesting thing is that developing a reusable AI sources. So focusing on the open source libraries, open source models, data sets for the educational development. So this is another policy that Government of India has introduced. Shitanshu. In addition, we have found that as in India, we have different school education boards also like CBSE, ICSE, then we have the IGSE. So we found that there are a lot of coverages also are going on, like introduction of AI in the curriculum by CBSE, and Intel has collaborated where almost more than 24,000 schools are being covered. In addition to that, there are some not only CBSE board, there are other school boards also. They have understood the potential, and they are going to introduce this artificial intelligence in their curriculum. Even in the state boards, like in Odisha, state boards, they are also working a lot to integrate as per the national education policy recommendation. They are also preparing their own state curriculum for integrating artificial intelligence. Following that, some other states are also developing their own curriculum. In Uttar Pradesh also, they are developing their own artificial intelligence curriculum for the school education. This is very interesting report that result that we have found that AI skills among women by country, and it is very I will say that very good news that India is leading that most of the AI skills by women. It is a self-reported by LinkedIn users, but still it is showing a very positive sign that um, we have less gender difference in using the artificial or uh, having the artificial intelligence skills. So which is a very promising result that we are getting. So it's not only male-dominated field, women are also being participating in our AI skills. Shitanshu. Now we have gone through the whole status of the artificial intelligence and what is going on, what are the policies of the Government of India about the artificial intelligence implementation. We have identified some of the very important challenges for India also. One very important thing is that who is going to govern and accountable for it, because as still we don't have specific policy for data regulation. Next, very important thing that international organizations like UNESCO and European Union, they have already guidelines for ethics of artificial intelligence in education. But as government policy, still um, we are thinking and we are preparing. Still, there is no concrete policy for that. Third thing is that accessing training data, as we know that most of the data is being covered by the weird countries. Weird means that is the Western educated and mostly the developed countries, developed economies, they have the training data. Developing countries like India, we don't have access to have the training data. So how we can have the open access data so that we can develop our own model based on our needs. So that is another thing. Digital and data colonialism, which is another factor that most of the data are being dominated by the Western world, not by the third world country. So another thing is that as we know that when we are talking about artificial intelligence curriculum, we need the students more critical thinkers as compared to more memorization based education. So how we can transform the education system to critical thinking and more computational thinking. So that is another challenge. It will take time, but I think I'm very hopeful that because of the national education policy, we will definitely go for that. Last but not least, that we have the resources and digital infrastructure challenges are also there, because implementation for these things, so we face some issues there. And digital divide is also, is there is nothing to deny that we are facing the digital divide, whether urban, suburban, and rural part of India. So these are, I think, most of the important challenges for India, and we need to find the solution. So that's all from my side, Shitanshu. Over to you. Shitanshu, you are mute.
You could unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bhagat. I think the challenges that you have shared with respect to India are also applicable for most of the global South countries and also global North countries. Some of these challenges are applicable across the globe. But it would be really beneficial for everyone to reflect on what are the takeaways from Indian context to the global AI in education ecosystem. So let's move to the next part of this session towards Dr. Rwitajit Majumdar, who will share us his experiences on implementation of AI in education. Over to you, Dr. Majumdar.
Thanks, Dr. Mishra. Let me first introduce and also give you a perspective. So while you see that there are 4 of the panelists from Indian origin, and we also have people working in the global organization like UNESCO as Dr. Mishra, and we are also having Professor Bhagat and Professor Ramkumar, who are very rooted in the Indian educational and AI community over there. I moved to Japan, and now currently I have moved into another organization in the September. So I would try to share some of the things where I wear a design science and a learning analytics researcher hat, where we develop systems, and I will give you one concrete example of some of the systems which are using AI, and it's been implemented in the school and university education in a couple of cities and universities in Japan. So that's my background. And with that, let's move to the next slide. So what we try to propose is we proposed a process model of how technology enhanced, or very specifically AI enhanced tools can be implemented and utilized in a regular teaching learning workflow. And it's a process model. That means what does the student do, what does the system do, and how does this means how does the data pipeline inform all of those decisions that the teachers and the students take. So it's named as the adapter model, and it starts with data collection. So Shitanshu, this is an animated slide. So if you can just control that once. So in the data collection, there are many online tools, and even tools and platforms which track the learner interaction. So that's the first step. And then I think you just need to click. Yeah, thanks. So in that context, we have, say, tools like Moodle, very simple LMS, and which logs interaction log, which has interaction logs. But in our context, we have also built an ebook reader, which is Bookroll, which has all the annotations and learner interactions within that system. And with that log, we can go to the next phase of doing the analysis. And in the first phase, there is still not the AI part of it. But in the next phase, the analysis, there can be certain kind of AI which can be incorporated, which runs the engine for the analysis, and then it's presented in the dashboard. So then moving forward from there, in the planning phase, based on the analysis, we can then develop more support for the teachers. For instance, here we can have, say, some kind of interaction patterns, and then based on that, we can have automatic or semi-automatic or guided email-based intervention for the students who are either falling back on the pace of the course or has certain specific content knowledge that needs to be delivered for them. And after that process, the student and the teacher can keep executing and monitoring that cycle, right? And using the data which is present either in the dashboard or really in the systems that they're using. But the cycle, if it ends over there, it's not continuing the loop, and it's not continuing that. So there is a reflection phase in the end where we are trying to build a repository of all the evidences that are gathered. So for instance, what was the problem in which the AI or this teacher, what kind of indicators were looked at it? So from an AI perspective, what are the features that were looked, or from the features perspective, what are the things that were looked in the dashboard to decide on a particular plan? And then what was the solution? The solution means what was the executed plan to mitigate the things which were seen to be undesirable learner actions, or to promote certain desirable ones, and what was the result from it. And if you have a repository of it, that is something that becomes shareable, and that's the basis of what, how, or what to share and how to share. If we move forward, so with this Dapper model, what we wanted to, this is a example of, so we the concept of self-explanation, which is quite researched upon in the learning science community, but there is this concept of explaining for the student to create their own knowledge. But again, in the AI community, we need data and we need labels, or if we need enough explanation for the algorithms also to work. So there was this scope of doing a synergy between these and the act of explanation and the explainable AI part of it. We tried to see that kids were given maths problem in that ebook reader, but then they were asked to answer by doing handwritten notes on their ebook platform, right? And based on that, they could see in an animated way where they were trying to, while they were trying to answer the maths problem. And the AI could then extract features of their handwriting to map to what kind of specific maths items were getting as stuck points. And then the student could explain why they got stuck. And in the process, the AI could learn that what are the points which are getting stuck and why are they getting stuck. And then keep doing that in a cyclic way. And we implemented that in both junior high school and high school mathematics. And we could see that there can be a recommendation of the next problem that can be given based on this model. And so this is one of the things. So on the left top part, the green blob over there talks about how we can recommend quiz. And based on the quiz, the student can answer that quiz by doing handwritten solution, and then evaluate their have a self-evaluation of their solution, and then they can read their answering process and then say where they got stuck and why. And then based on that, the system would then have feedbacks based on that stuck point, and again recommending the next problem. So this was done. The uniqueness is it's being extracted from handwritten analysis, and then also doing that in a more cyclic and more continuous process. So next, let me move on. So from there, the insights are that we have to focus on the stakeholders and their context, and not to think about it as a stand-alone technology that is being developed. That's one of the things. And even coming from learning science, learning analytics community, the objective, also if I wear an engineering hat, it's not just to know the how, but how to make it accessible and make it more implementation. So for there, in the learning activity itself, if we can utilize the data that is being created. And to do that, the third point emphasizes that it needs awareness and training and policies, not just at an institutional level, but as at a national level, or things at a global level, such that there can be sharing of methods and processes and evidences that are there. Right? If you go to the next point, so for doing that, we had another event last year in Kyoto, and I was there in Kyoto, and I can also see on the left there is Shitanshu who visited. And in this working group, so we had a thematic working group on artificial intelligence and big data for teaching and learning, and its implication for the school teachers, leaders, and policymakers. And we try to do that in a more systematic manner. So if we go next. So we did a mixed method Delphi study where we engaged with 44 experts and tried to see the top trends which was emerging. And because that time, when we started it, there was not the craze of the large language models, but there was more awareness about technology and AI-based technology because of sudden online transactions of education due to the pandemic. And with that, we approached the experts, and then they tried to conceptualize about what are the new realities that emerged because of the existing technology. And from that, what were the recommendations? So if we move forward, we had some call to actions. So it was identified that not just the technology landscape is rapidly changing, but because of the change of that, the educational stakeholders and the practice, and there are new roles which are emerging for the educational stakeholders. Or there are new pathways or processes that are emerging for the pedagogical practices. And that would lead to understanding of, or we need to foster this human AI alliance in education, not just means through institutional strategies and through training programs and through policies, such that we are not deprofessionalizing the stakeholders. So they are supported and they are more enriched with the technology that is developed. Next, for this, again, there is a need of drawing evidences. So quite a lot of work currently is probably under study, and people are trying to see how these very fast evolving technologies are actually impacting. But we need to create that and build that in a very rigorous manner such that it can inform implementation. Go ahead. And while doing that, I think, of course, there is no debate about it, but we need to be aware, and we need to consider the privacy and the ethical considerations through a multi-perspective and disciplinary approach. It's not just that a technologist is there, and a panel would have the global perspective as well as different domain perspective to approach the core of education. Yeah. So this was what was done, and what next is I'm also trying to build a platform called LI Reflect, where if we can have all of these things in a modular way, such that the development of it or the integration of the AI within the learning platform, it can also be modularized, and we build that with that modular approach. Then that is one of the things that we are trying to do next. Actually, to move forward. Oh, I think that's what I wanted to share at the beginning, and we can move on and have more discussions at the end.
Thank you, Rito, for sharing your experiences. And one of the interesting part for me was the process of design and development of AIED that you shown, and it is a cyclic process. And in the process, we see that there are steps related to monitoring and also a step on reflection. So before I move forward to ethics of AI in education, so that monitoring and the reflection process step, if they also include monitoring and reflections on the ethical dimensions of AIED, then the whole process will be more tightly knitted with different human concerns that we are going to talk with respect to ethics. So the next part is something that I'm going to talk about. Okay, let me share this. Yeah. So what I'm going to talk here is a highlight from an ongoing report on ethics of AI in education. The report will be pre-launched in December, and the full report will be launched in the March next year. And the report is on ethics of AI in learner-centric education. So yeah, to start with, many of us talk about benefits of AI in education are related to the three E's. AI helps us in scaling up efficiency in education process. It improves effectiveness of the educational process and also helps us in ensuring equity. But what we recommend that all these three objectives, three E's, should fall under the umbrella of a bigger fourth E, which is ethics. So we achieve these three objectives, but also adhere to the ethical guidelines that are necessary. As far as the ethics of AI in education domain is concerned, we consider it as a separate discipline, not just a subset of education or other discipline, but a separate discipline which is informed by existing disciplines of education, ethics, AI in education. So in the report, what we talk about is how to, so one of the first introductory chapters is understanding what is ethics of AI in education. So this Venn diagram is coming from a publication by Wayne Holmes. And it says that to understand ethics of AI in education, we need to look deeply into the dimensions of data, education, and algorithm. The report introduces the fourth dimension of the user. So if we want, we advocate that if we want to understand the nuances of ethics of AI in education, we have to look into the interaction of users. Users could be different stakeholders, for example, teachers, learners, policymakers. So how these different stakeholders interact with data, algorithm, and education, taking all these four dimensions together, we will get a better understanding of ethics of AI in education and the nuances related to it. So a quick look into our synthesis of what we want AI to do in education. So from the literature, we synthesized broadly five dimensions in which people tend to use AI in education. So first one is improving learner effectiveness, and then the second one is making education more learner-centric, then reducing teachers' burden, supporting inclusion and equity in education, and promoting lifelong learning. This year's report, the current report, is focusing on making education more learner-centric. Now, so what's there in the report is that we talk about ethics as two-level approach. So ethical challenges, they are often systemic and making it impractical just to rely on individual rights. So we need to look at relevance and roles of individuals and also look at what can be done at systems level. So I'm going to share one recommendations at the individual level, one recommendation at the systems level from the report. So key recommendation at the individual level talks about empowering individuals. By empowering, we talk about improving individuals' competencies for ethics of AI in education. So by competencies, we talk about a competency framework, and this is also under development. So, but a glimpse of the framework is that it talks about the necessary knowledge, skills, and personal qualities that an individual needs to harness, improve, such in order to make sure that they are safe and as Professor Bhagat said, that we do responsible AI use in education. So skills include skills like skills of empathy, mindfulness, critical thinking. Knowledge does not just include the basic literacy level concepts on AI, but also includes the basic concept and awareness of ethical concerns related to AI in education. And on personal qualities front, we talk about curiosity, courage, collaboration, so on and so forth. So this is one thing at the individual level that improve work on the individual user competencies. At the systemic level, we talk about uh, proposing a commons to regulate and manage the collection, processing, and sharing of educational data. So it's really debatable who should own a learning data, whether an individual should own or the private should own. What we advocate is there has to be a commons that is there to manage collection, processing, and sharing, and all the life span of the educational data collected by the learners. And so the data commons, we advocate that it has to be created in order to protect the fundamental rights around the data. It should serve the public interest and it should generate some economic value. Now, by economic value, we may mean different things. For example, one of economic value could be related to wealth. Other economic value could be related to the learning outcomes and effectiveness and the 3 E's that we talked about. And the report also talks about different ethical principles, transparency, bias, and inclusion, data protection, so on. And within each ethical principles, it provides some guidelines and goals corresponding to each principle. For example, for transparency, the goals needs to be achieved are explainability, explicability, understandability, and interpretability, so on and so forth. So these so different goals needs to be achieved in order to adhere to the different ethical principle. Just to end my part here is to announce the dates. So the pre-launch of the report would be done on 4th December 2023, and the complete report would be launched in the mid of the March. And the report constitutes of all these chapters on AI for learner-centric education. Then it talks about different ethical principles such as data privacy and security, data custodianship, then transparency, autonomy, bias and inclusion, and the competency framework. So please stay tuned to the website, the mgiep.unesco.org. Yeah, so now let's move next forward to the next section, transparency and autonomy in ethics of AIED, where Professor Ram is going to talk about how to solve, how to address some of the ethical issues. Over to you, Ram.
Yeah, thanks, Shitanshu. So I think Shitanshu talked about the report from UNESCO, right? So we'll take one of these sections, transparency. We go dive deeper. That's a plan in today's talk. So I'm Ramkumar Rajendran. I'm associated with IIT Bombay. Yeah, next slide. So I just want to set a context before we move into, this particular topic. We'll be talking only about learner-centric environment. When we say learner-centricity or learner-centric learner environment, we are talking about the adaptive instruction systems or intelligent tutoring systems or personalized learning, personalized scaffolding, those kind of systems. In these systems, usually they use learning analytics to understand the learner's behavior, the interaction with the system, like a digital trace has been used to create a model and provide scaffolding. This is one where Rita was talking in detail about developing a system which gives a feedback, collect data from multimodal channels. In this particular kind of system, if you focus on transparency and autonomy, we will talk about what are the challenges and what are the suggestions, guidelines we can do. In order to do this, what we did search what is transparency in of education, like ethics of AIED. We looked at several documents, and we found we did a systematic literature survey for the last 10 years, and 7 databases included. We found very few papers are attempting to create a framework for transparency or autonomy for ethics of AID. So this whole, another 10 minutes is about from those literature review. So this image in the side, actually, it's created by AI. And now we don't know what are the sources has been used to create this image. And that's the lack of transparency, for example. Yeah, equalness. Next slide. So I want to define what is transparency. Transparency refers to making operations, decisions, and outcomes of AI systems transparent to the user. When you say transparent, the user should be able to understand how the system created particular decision, what is the outcome of the system, and the user should be able to participate in the system. This is going with transparency. Currently, the AI systems are considered as a black box system. That is the issue. So we want to make it transparent. Yeah. Next slide. Thanks, Shitanshu. So we would like to talk about ethical issues in transparency one by one. Yeah. So the first is the current AI systems creates a false sense of trust. Whereas the system is not allowing the users to ask questions, if we allow the users to challenge the outcome by the AI system and challenge the decision made by the system, interact with the system, the user can create a trusted system. Currently, it's a false sense of trust. Yeah. Next 2 slides here. So the point here is the AI systems impacts the learner's autonomy and self-regulation. Whereas in a system where the system decides the learner needs particular material based on the learner's behavior, the system understands that the learner is having issue in particular topic and it provides a scaffolding or the feedback. But it might impact the learner's autonomy, the learner's self-regulation. The learner has to learn on their own. They have to their own metacognition. They have to plan. Then they have to monitor the progress, and they have to react it. But the current AI system is not allowing the learners to monitor their progress. It suddenly gives you the feedback without even the user asking it. This has to be stopped. Risk of transparency is one of the ethical issues here. And without the learners learning about metacognition, they are not able to think critically. That is a major issue. The other one is the AI system which delivers feedback without explaining the criteria, evidence, or rationale leads to learners' engagement, reduction in learners' engagement, motivation, and satisfaction. Also, and the ability to reflect on their own learning to seek further feedback is also reducing it. If the learners gives feedback, the system gives feedback to the learners don't know how to ask feedback, when to ask feedback. And these issues also has to be addressed. And next one. So, and the systems, AI system with the biased data, that is the data which is trained on particular sample set, leads to unfair outcomes to the learners of different groups. That is also an important issue to address. So these are the major 4 ethical issues in transparency. And we would like to, in the next level, to talk about the ethical issues for different stakeholders. So we talk about the different stakeholders. In the last, we focused mainly on the ethical issues of learners and educators, whereas the lack of trust is issue, and whereas the algorithmic bias is an issue for the learners. Whereas the same for policymakers and regulators, the issues due to lack of transparency is the lack of oversight and evaluation of ethical standards and legal responsibility of a system is important for the policymakers to adhere to it, and they have to create a system based on that. And the quality, equity, and accountability is also a major threat for the policymakers. First, for developers, the developer has to consider the concerns raised by the AIED community and challenges, and they have to make a system transparent. And that is also not easy for developer to make everything transparent in the language where the learner can understand. So developer also have a different issues. And developer is the highest the stakeholder who has all the knowledge about the system, access to the data and everything. So the developer should have a more ethical ethical guidelines or ethical considerations towards the data and creating the system. So in the next slide. So we are suggesting how to ensure transparency in decision making. We're giving one example. For example, when you are collecting a data, be transparent in how and why the data is collected to the users and get the consent and inform the users that they have a control over the data. They can revoke their data anytime and why this data is going to be used. After data collection, that is doing after collecting the data, and while doing the data processing analysis, make sure that where's the data is stored and which data, what is the criteria you're going to use for normalization. Are you going to normalize and standardize all the data or only the few set of data? This is very important. And make sure that you use the right kind of tool for the analysis. And this tools used has to be transparent and has to be announced upfront for the learners. In algorithm use and decision making, we should use the proper models, and the training and verification has to be done. It's not that you use the data with a model which fits better for your narrative, and the model used should be validated properly, tested, and should be announced to the public, saying that transparently, this is the data model we used and why we have used it and what's the purpose this model might give it. In fact, we should be able to explain how is this model is able to give a particular response. Why you get the feedback now? You got a feedback because of these 3 steps you did before. And in the deployment of algorithm, the onus is on the developer or the one who is implementing it. They should test it properly, and they have to improve the system and check all this ethical issues before deployment. And they have to document and everything if they're existing. For example, if I've conducted a study for a school, and if a system is created for that, and if a system can be used by other researchers for a study, who is going to have the control over the data? Who is having the ethical considerations there? So those kind of documentation has to be needed. And if the system is deployed, who is going to run it, maintain it? Are you going to protect the system from privacy attack? Those things has to be measured. So it's not the system created and used and it's dropped somewhere. So you have to make sure the system is protected and used properly. So these are the few ethical considerations we are thinking about in a decision-making principle, during the decision-making phase. Yeah. Next slide. So, and we come to a set of strategies to address the ethical challenges. The first one important is the legal and policy framework to address the bias and discrimination in AIED. We have to come up with the different frameworks, and this has been done by several organizations, and it's in the place. Yeah, next. So we have to promote learners' autonomy and agency in AIED. For example, we give 3 different scenarios. The learner should have control over the data which is collected by the system. The learner should be able to revoke, edit, or add something to the data. The second point is learner should be part of the learning system. When the system provides particular recommendation to the learner should have a choice whether I should accept it or reject it. That is the key. Then it's not that the adapted content should be feed to the learner directly instead of forcing. Learners should give a choice. And the system should explain why this particular feedback has given to the students so that they have a choice. Well, they can make a decision choice. Okay. So next. Yeah, that's the part of algorithm. Yeah. So the importance of human oversight and accountability in AIED. So there should be when AI system is created, there should be someone accountable. And it's very important because we can't system fully controlled by the machines, like say or completely automated everything. Instead, the humans should have the accountable on system so that they have taken care of the ethics, they're taking care of the implementation, the testing, and the documenting every data collected. Yes. So trade-offs, that's very important. So when we talk about making system transparent, or when we talk about trade-off, the main trade-off one is, if I make a system more explainable, the system's efficiency goes down. Or if I try to create a system scalable, the systems, the explainability again goes down. So we need to have a trade-off between the how much the bias we should include, how much data we can collect, and the data might have bias versus the efficiency of the system. So that is the consideration for the developers. So these are the 5 strategies we recommend for the transparency, and also it includes the users' rights and the data collected. So this is one example of considering ethical values while creating the system. Yeah. Next. That's all from my side. So let's.
Great. So yeah, thank you, Ram. Uh, yeah, so let's move to audience questions. If I can't see any questions in the Q&A section as on the Who app. So yeah, please feel free to post your questions on chats, Q&A on Zoom or on the other app. By that time, I would take liberty to maybe ask um, one specific question to maybe Professor Bhagat about what do you think that the report, the recommendations from the report, the findings from the report, what are the takeaways for the overall globe? So you presented state of education, AI in India. So what others can take from that report outside India?
Outside India, I feel 2, 3 things. Very important thing is that one is very important. We are talking about the AI literacy, and for that, we really need professional development of the teachers. Okay, whether it's pre-service teachers or in-service teachers, they must have the experience of the implementation of the AI-based tools or solutions that you are developing, because ultimately as a technologist we can develop these solutions, but the implementation part will be in the school level, right? And they are the stakeholders who are going to implement. So until unless they are empowered to implement those things, then we will never get the success. First thing. Second thing is that for policy level, we need to have policy level at 2 levels. One is macro level, one is micro level. Okay, macro level, that is the overall national policy for the AI, and then maybe the school level or sub-content micro level also, they must have their own policy also, that what to share, what not to share. And as Ram also mentioned, that the users, they should have the right that what to share, what not to share. Okay, it's not the third party who has the right to to share the without the consent of the things. And another point, what I want, that there should be sensitization of the, even if you are developing these guidelines, ethical guidelines, already there are existing, some guidelines are there from the UNESCO and EU. But even for your own national guidelines, what you are developing, there should be sensitization of these guidelines for different stakeholders, whether teachers or students or principals of the schools or university level. So that is very important. So sometimes what we find that even the guidelines are available, but people are not very much aware of this, right? Even the common person also, they should have some basic idea about artificial intelligence, because that we are talking about the AI digital literacy, right? So until unless we all common people who are using any smart devices, so they are actually using artificial intelligence, right? There are many solutions they are using, but they are not aware of the solutions there, and sometimes they are not aware of some violation that they are doing also. Okay, so that common means a framework which should be also there, how a common person can also understand artificial intelligence, and what are the pros and cons, those could be shared. And some kind of sensitization program should be there from the government of India, or maybe some other governments of states also, that will help the common people to understand AI and all the dimensions of AI in a very layman's manner.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, thank you for the response. And I think one common theme is emerging from the panelists is that being acknowledging that there are different stakeholders of AI in education, and it's not just about learners, or it's not just about the creator of the AIED systems. Uh, because there are no questions I can see on the platform. If anyone can see, please let me know. So I would like to ask Rito maybe about even, can you take this idea of stakeholders forward and comment on, according as per your experience, how where do different stakeholders uh, play their role in the whole development and design process of AI?
Yeah, thanks, Shitanshu, for that. I think I will move forward with what Kaushal was talking about, that there is this need of a general AI awareness in the public, right? But in the context of education, again, there are different stakeholders. Somebody can be researcher, somebody can be practitioner, somebody can be the learner themselves. And what is the ethical considerations that each of them means is closely connected with what is the purpose of that AI in their context. And what Ram was also mentioning, that one of the person who suddenly becomes a key in a key role becomes the developer or the developing team, because they are aware of the nitty-gritties of the technology. But there is, I think, one of the emerging role which is coming up is like a translator. A translator means the one who can say that these information about, or this information about the application of AI is a necessary information for the stakeholders to understand and then have a conversation with the consent process. So that said, it I think it's not a very straightforward. Means if I say that, okay, there is also this on the flip side. If a developer needs to document everything, that also involves cost. So it involves cost not only in monetary terms but in time. And then in this fast pace of moving the technology forward, how do we do that? So I think it's a very layered kind of perspective that one needs to take. And it's important to have these multiple stakeholders come together and not just have these conversations in columns of each individuals, but to bring them together to see what are the interactions which are happening, what are the knowledge which is available in the intersection of these different stakeholders. Yeah.
Okay.
And just to add to one more point, there is a lot of technology standards which are also there. Yeah.
Great. So, yeah, let's move forward to the next part where we conclude with uh, our conception of what is the way forward. So maybe we can start with Ram. Maybe one or two statements on what do you think is way forward.
I think as Bhagat mentioned, also Rito mentioned, and you also talking about, we should make this the guidelines and sensitize to all the stakeholders and make sure everybody understands how the AI system works and what is they're not just a user, they're also contributor. That's the way forward.
Great. Yeah, over to you, Professor Bhagat.
I think I have already mentioned, but for me, I believe that safe AI is one of the key part, for the implementation and to harness the power of AI. So safety first, and AI will be the next. So that is my tagline I will add there.
Great. Ritu?
Bring people together, bring knowledge together, share that, and have the purpose clear.
Shitanshu Mishra has
That
stopped
should be
screen share.
Yeah. It is too transparent. It tells everyone that who is sharing the screen. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, all the audience. For me, one key takeaway from the session is what Professor Bhagat said about that, common, the end users are really important. So often we when we talk about AI in education, we are just clouded by the developers and even the researchers. But even the common user, the end user is very important. From there, we are going to get the real picture of what is impacting them and what is not impacting them. So yeah, for me, one of the key way forward is to, as Rito said, bring all the stakeholders together, and all the stakeholders are going to inform how the AI in education in future should look like. Thank you, the panelists and the audiences.